Hi, everyone. Today we are going to be talking about marijuana. So let's go ahead and get started. First things first, in 1970, so about 50 years ago, marijuana was classified as a Scheduled 1 drug in the United States. So basically what a Scheduled 1 drug means, they classify drugs based on different descriptions. It is a drug that has currently no accepted medical use and is highly potential for abuse. It is categorized as the most dangerous drug of all the drug schedules, with potentially severe psychological or physical dependence. Some examples of different drugs that also fit in this category are heroin, LSD, marijuana. It's actually still considered a Schedule 1 drug. It hasn't been changed through Congress. Ecstasy and other drugs that are listed there. So you can obviously see, like, this is actually classified still to this day as one of the worst drugs possible. However, today, marijuana's therapeutic benefits are widely acknowledged. So you do have these CBD shops, you have these little weed world trucks that are on the street in Vegas and other places where different types of marijuana use are legal. They are capable of many therapeutic benefits. For example, it helps with pain relief. It does give you short-term anxiety relief. However, it depends on the person. It can help with sleep, nausea, so not feeling right, and things like that as well. There is a growing recognition for marijuana's medical value. So you can see here on this map, basically it can be legalized in two ways. It can be legalized medically, which means it can be used for medicinal purposes, pain relief, nausea, anxiety, things like that. And then it can also be legalized recreationally, which is basically like anybody can use it. It's fine. So you can see here in the United States, even though it is still considered a Schedule 1 drug, it is having recognition for medical value and is being recognized in different ways and legalized in different ways. As you can see, Indiana, it is still illegal to use it, whether that's recreational or medically. So we know all this information about marijuana, but it doesn't answer the question, is recreational, so using it for no benefit, is recreational marijuana use good for your brain? We talked about the nervous system and kind of the effects that it has. What happens is there's this cannabinoid system, and the cannabinoid system has receptors all over the brain and body. So we talked about those neurons and how those neurons communicate. We don't fully understand the cannabinoid system. We do know that there's messages being passed between neurons. And what happens is when the message is being sent down a neuron, what's happening is the cannabinoids, so the extract from the cannabis plant, from the marijuana, is traveling backwards, kind of distracting that impulse from being sent. It does slow down those signal transmissions. However, we don't have that much information about it at this time. We just know that it is slowing down those messages. I want to talk to you about the difference between CBD and THC, because marijuana is made up of two chemical components, CBD and THC. CBD is what you see around Indiana. You'll see CBD stores. Basically, it's an extract from the cannabis plant. And CBD is responsible for marijuana's non-psychoactive effects. So that's things like pain relief and all those different things. However, when we have the marijuana together and people smoke it or eat edibles or whatever it is, that includes THC. And this is responsible for marijuana's psychoactive effects. It gives you that high feeling. So this obviously impairs behavior, cognition, perception, and it's what kind of causes the slowing down of the signaling between neurons. So let's talk about the effects of marijuana as a whole. It is going to vary based on a person's brain chemistry, genetics, and previous life experiences. So the harmful effects that happen in place of marijuana, if any, they do vary considerably from person to person. I did want to talk about the brain because this is a huge part, and we're talking about the impulses that are being sent throughout the neurons. And this goes when using any drug. Our brain does not fully develop until we are 25 years old. So when messages are trying to be sent, when we're using some sort of drug, it is stopping the brain from forming those new connections. This can have a negative effect on communication, learning, memory, emotions, and all of those different things. And so when we're choosing to use drugs underage, the messages that are trying to happen in between cells, it's having an effect on those things because our brain is not fully developed yet. For now, it is unclear how severe the damage can be to the brain or whether it's reversible when it comes to using marijuana. The risk is going to clearly be higher the younger someone is, because if you're smoking weed at 16, your brain is still having about 9 years to develop, whereas if you're smoking at a different age where your brain is more fully developed, then it might not have those long-term effects. So like I said, for now, it's kind of unclear how severe the damage is or whether it's reversible. There aren't many studies happening on marijuana because it is still a Schedule I drug, not legal in most of the U.S. Marijuana actually can cause hallucinations or paranoid delusions. This is known as marijuana-induced psychosis, so it's kind of like hallucinating. The symptoms usually will subside when you stop using the marijuana. However, there are rare cases where psychosis does not subside. Family history of psychotic disorders like schizophrenia that we talked about in the mental health unit is the clearest, though not the only risk factor for this disease. Hallucinations are more common in young adults. It is worth noting that psychotic behaviors surface at this age anyway, so it would be hard to distinguish whether it's happening based on the marijuana itself or whether it's just those disorders developing in general. Like I kind of discussed earlier, marijuana's role is going to vary from person to person. If you are hanging out with somebody and you are using marijuana and you guys are smoking the same weed and you are having the same amount of weed, it is going to affect one person different than it is going to affect the other person, because the role that it has for each person is going to vary depending on the person. We're not quite sure why that happens, but some people get really hyper and giggly, and some people get really chilled out and lazy and just have the munchies and things like that. Like, there are different effects. However, at any age, along with many other drugs, the brain and body become less sensitive to marijuana after repeated uses. So if I'm smoking marijuana 5 times a week, it's not going to have as big of an effect as I smoke it over a longer period of time, because the body's going to create that tolerance to the drug. When this happens, what is going to happen is you're going to end up smoking more marijuana to achieve the same effect that is then in turn affecting your brain in different ways as well. Unlike many other drugs, there is no risk of fatal overdose from marijuana. So this is a giant benefit, because we have people that smoke different like things like heroin and take pills and do all of these things. And when they abuse that drug, they do overdose and they could die from that. And also even heavy use, so even using marijuana like excessively, does not lead to life-threatening withdrawal symptoms. So you're not going to become deathly ill when you're trying to stop using the drug. It doesn't have very many withdrawal symptoms. However, with that said, there are more subtle forms of marijuana withdrawal. So yeah, you may not have like the terrible sickness and all of that. However, it can cause disturbances in your sleep when you're kind of getting used to using that drug. It helps with your sleep patterns. And so then when you stop taking it, it's not causing you to become more relaxed. It can cause irritability, basically a form of withdrawing from addiction. Just you're irritated because you're used to having that and changing your behaviors based on the use of that drug. It can also cause a depressed mood as well. This is very common in stopping the use of marijuana. These symptoms should pass after a few weeks of stopping use. So you will have these symptoms after you stop using it, but they should pass after a few weeks of stopping. So, does this answer the question, is marijuana use bad for your brain? I think overall it's going to depend who you are as a person. While some risk factors are easy to identify and how marijuana affects them, others aren't quite understood. We don't have very much research going on in the world when it comes to marijuana use, so we need to find out more information and have more studies and see the different effects to kind of answer that question. So that kind of answers your questions there. If you have any questions about this topic or any thoughts, you will be doing a discussion today, so hopefully you can get those out, and I'll be reading those.